Entrepreneurs don't make clinics. Clinics make entrepreneurs.
Three, two, one. Liftoff.
Welcome to the Ketamine Startup Podcast. This is where we talk about how to build a ketamine therapy practice, industry insights, and what's shaping the future of psychedelic medicine. I'm Kim, and in today's episode, we're diving into something that every clinic owner experiences, but most don't recognize: the 4 predictable life cycle stages that every ketamine practice goes through. From the moment you're contemplating opening a clinic to surviving those first chaotic months, to hitting your stride in the prime years and eventually planning your legacy and exit, these stages are as inevitable as they are challenging. In today's conversation, we'll help you identify exactly which stage you're in right now, understand what challenges are normal for that phase, and most importantly, how to make strategic, value-based decisions instead of reactive ones, driven by fear or external pressure. Whether you're in stage 0 contemplation or surviving the infancy chaos or considering your long-term legacy, this framework will help you anticipate what's coming and prepare accordingly. Before we jump in though, a quick disclaimer. This information shared in this episode is for educational purposes only and does not constitute business or legal advice. Practice management approaches should be evaluated with your specific circumstances and regulatory requirements. Now let's dive into the 4 life cycle stages of ketamine clinic ownership.
This is really interesting because when I think about a business, I think about how it's almost like starting a brand new life. And it really is, because this metaphor that we're going to use talks about these 4 stages, going from being literally a baby or even the idea of having a new business. Maybe when you're thinking about family planning, it might be in that stage when it's just an idea percolating in your mind and your partner's mind, to being a teenager, the prime adult years, and then midlife and beyond.
What's the word? I'm not infographic, but it's like a way of looking at your business. Because you can always look at cash flow, cash coming in, cash going out, how financially successful you are. But to acknowledge that there are stages, just like Sam was saying, that, like family planning to having an infant. And if you acknowledge that there are changes, you can then anticipate challenges. You can make decisions aligned with your values as opposed to being reactive. And just like how each stage of child development or a development as a human, there's certain things that are going to come up. The teenage years is more rebellious. You know that infancy, the parents, the caregivers, they're the whole world for the child. It is seriously no different for a business. There are many gurus and influencers or thought leaders that will say, your business is not a baby, it is a machine. The reality is we are emotional beings, and so we get invested in it, and inevitably it is like a child. Nobody cares for your business like you do. Nobody cares for your kid as much as you do. You're like, your heart and soul is in it. Even if you go into it trying to be really, logical and clinical about it.
So let's recap what are the 4 stages, and then we're going to go into each of those in depth. So, stage 1 is going to be the infancy stage. Stage 2 are the teenage years. Stage 3 are the prime adult years. And then stage 4 is midlife and beyond. So let's talk about each one of these. And I think the first one, obviously, is to start at stage 1, the infancy stage. And before we actually do, this kind of reiterates what Kim was talking about, but knowing these various stages will help you make informed, value-based decisions at whatever stage you are in. So let's get started with stage 1, infancy. So this is where you have the new baby clinic, and there may be sleepless nights, overthinking, you're excited, you may be working 80 plus hours between caring for this brand new baby clinic while fulfilling your responsibilities at your salaried position. So this is really the point of like that new adventure where you're really excited about the potential to change your patients' lives. Also, mixed with a little bit of dread about some of the challenges that you may be facing, that you've learned about, that you know other clinics have gone through, and you need to mentally prepare for it.
And like with a new baby, there's this feeling of everything might is like a big deal or that you might mess up and there's a lot of that anxiety, as Sam mentioned, with excitement. And that's I mean, as expected and kind of good. It's this mix of energy and excitement, and it really does fuel you for the beginning. And the main thing here is how do you know if you're in the infancy stage? And I think the biggest thing is your patient volume is inconsistent. You don't have that steady, somewhat like sure that you're going to have all these patients come each week. And your clinic revenue, because you don't have that steady patient flow, doesn't cover all your expenses yet. You're burning through your startup costs, your runway, and also, while you're recognizing that you don't have any patients and you don't have that clinic revenue coming in, you're doing everything. Because hopefully you are trying to keep your costs to a minimum. So you're wearing all the hats. You're the clinician, you're the marketer, you're the scheduler, you're the janitor. And because of like all the things that you're doing, you are starting to feel like really overwhelmed or burning out a little bit, you question what you're doing. You're like, was this really a good idea? I'm not really sure. So, like, one of the core challenges, and we're going to like touch base on a core challenge for each stage, is sane survival. And what do we mean by that, Sam?
It means that you're possibly burning through your runway, which is the money that you've set aside to cover your expenses. And it might be going faster than you've anticipated because you want to make sure that all of your T's are crossed, all of your I's are dotted, which may mean, like the licenses and permits and insurance and bank accounts. Meanwhile, you're trying to market and connect with your medical community to get patients into your door. And so at this point, every patient, every dollar matters. But if you get too busy, it might cost you your mental health, emotional health, physical health. You might get burnout coming up. So it can be really hard. And if you're not able to find that sustainable rhythm, the baby can die, i.e., infant mortality. Like you can close your clinic. So this is a time when you're devoting a lot of resources to the baby, a lot of sleepless nights. If you have a kid and you're listening to this, you're like, yeah, when we had our, newborn, like we were up, we weren't sleeping much. And this is kind of similar to that stage. Before we go on though, I want to just briefly talk about stage 0, which is even before the infancy stage. And specifically, this might be where the clinic isn't even open and you're kind of in that contemplative phase of like someone is deciding to have a family planning. And it's like, should we have a baby? Is this the right time for us? Are there things? And one of the things I've learned is that there really is no right time to have a baby necessarily. Like, if you want to start something, if you want to have that baby, if you want to start up that business, like I would argue that the best time is now because you're not getting any younger. And we know that there is a biological time clock for humans as far as reproduction, but in a way, there's like a time clock for opening up a business. And I think the sooner one starts, the better it is because, yeah, we're just not getting any younger. I think the threshold comes from stage 0 to stage 1 is the moment of conception, I guess, would be the moment one signs a contract. I think that's kind of that threshold. When someone signs that 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 5 year lease or whatever it may be, that's when your name is you're like, "Yep, I'm entering a binding contract." Fortunately, it's not like an 18-year contract or anything, like with a baby. But yeah, I think when someone signs that contract, the first time they actually put money in. And it might be, they put money from their personal savings into a bank account, and that transfer from your personal savings into the clinic checking account. Like that's the moment when it's actually like, oh, this is real. Like we're making this happening. And of course, with our course, we teach people about going from stage 0 to stage 1 and beyond. But yeah, I think the stage 0 is another fascinating aspect of the ketamine clinic life cycle.
We're social beings, so you're gonna ask people, "Oh, what do you think?" Or other people are gonna be like, "Oh, wait, you said you wanted to start a ketamine clinic. It's the new year. Are you gonna go ahead and start it?" And there's gonna be people who are like, "Oh, I wouldn't do that. Things are so unstable. Why would you bring a kid into this world now?" And other people are like, "Why wouldn't I wanna have" having a child is something that I've always wanted to do. So it really goes back to what do you want? And I find that those that have gone into this field or in general of, like, starting their own business, starting their own private practice, doesn't need to be even talking about a ketamine clinic at this point, is something they wanna do, while other people may be feeling that it's not something that they wanna do. So, I think that's, like, one of the things I really wanna highlight, and we're gonna be talking about it more about these key decisions in this episode for each stage is it's really going back to yourself, within yourself to ask yourself some questions.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think the core challenge is at stage 0? Like, what's the biggest challenge that someone faces?
Why do you wanna do this? We
Yeah.
talk about our why a lot in our course and in our blogs and podcasts. I mean, you listen to other folks that we've interviewed, other clinic owners, other people in this space, even not business, even not even having their own clinic. It's like, why am I doing this? What is their why? What is that driving purpose?
Yeah.
And if it's financial, then when things are when, we have what shrinkonomics and things are getting more expensive, then of course it wouldn't be a good idea. It's not aligned, the external environment is not aligned with their why. But if you have a why that is less affected or indirectly affected, I guess, by the external factors, then maybe it might be a time for that person. But again, that's an individual thing, but the why. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, this applies to businesses in general, but when a business is purpose driven, I think it's a much more robust business that can be long lasting versus when it's driven purely by financial motives. So, yeah, I would say the core challenge really agree with you as figuring out what is my why? What is my purpose? Why am I doing this? And we can even apply it to the having a child metaphor. It's like, why do we want this baby? Like, what's the purpose? And it might be legacy, or it might be, hey, this is, the next journey in my evolution as a human being, being a father, a mother, whatever it may be. I think having the why is really crucial for someone to reflect upon themselves and ask, like, what is my reason? What is my driving purpose behind this? Because, like Kim had mentioned, if you don't have that why, and there's going to be challenges, like in all the stages, we promise that if that why is not there, I think that the survival of long-term viability of the clinic can be challenging for sure.
I think each of these stages or in this construct of how to view your business, once you have that clear key decision of this is why I'm doing it, you're then able to use that why to help navigate the challenges in that situation, in that stage, right? So the whole idea about stage 0 is going from idea to conception, essentially, right? To sign that lease or finally set up that business bank account, right? And I think the core challenge in that stage 0 is to actually do it, right? People are stuck in stage 0 because they're not clear on why they're doing it, and when they're not clear, they can't actually address the challenge of actually launching and doing it. And so once you've know your why, you've done it, you've signed something, you've pushed thousands of dollars into something that you can't easily remove, get back, you're in that infancy stage, right?
Yeah, actually, there's one more thing I want to mention about stage 0, going from stage 0 to stage 1 is like a human um, being, while someone's pregnant. Probably for most mothers, the most challenging part would be the delivery process, so 9 months of incubation and then the final, like, "Hey, yeah, we're at 40 weeks, we're gonna be delivering." Like, that process of delivering can be quite challenging, and how that applies to the clinic is Once someone has the idea, they've signed the paperwork, they're like, "Yep, it's going live. We're doing the build out." For some reason, that final like last bit of like physically opening the clinic, opening the doors, buying the furniture, like it's going to be challenging. And to be cognizant now, like, yeah, the actual labor process, the delivery process, and after 9 months, like that's where it's going to be a lot more work, and to be prepared for it. And so that now you're aware that that's going to happen, you can expect it, right? Because it doesn't just magically appear. Like there's the incubation period and then the delivery. And I remember learning that they said the last 10% of a project will take 90% of the time, meaning that the last 10% of it actually opening, the doors opening, may take 90% of your time and energy. So if you're aware of that now, that's going to be super useful for when that day comes.
Totally, totally. I mean, and going back to that whole labor and delivery analogy is it's you do all this planning and then things can take longer. You can have a long birthing process, or a difficult one. Challenges can occur. And I think that it points out to even stretch this analogy further is, having that community, how some folks have like a doula or they have people around them that are there to support them. So I think that's why through our journey, having individuals that have gone ahead of us and done these things, having that supportive community, other folks that have gone through this process and sharing and they understand and know how difficult can things can be is super helpful. And I feel that's one of the things that I love about this, our course and this podcast is we've built this community that understand like that last 10% you can get so hung up on and get stuck. And we've seen it in folks, and that happened to us too. And that's just one of those things. But because now that that can happen, you can make value aligned decisions versus being, oh, surprise, this last 10% is going to be super difficult. Or like for infancy, oh, wait, I'm going to have to balance survival of my baby clinic with managing my own sanity because you can burn both ends of the candle, rather.
So we have stage zero, which is like the, conception, incubation. Then we have stage one, which is the infancy. So now it's born and it's open and you're seeing patients. Did you want to add anything to the infancy stage?
We talked about the core challenge, how to survive and maintain your own sanity, right? Because you're trying to do everything correctly, but you're also new to this and you're doing everything for it. And you can be, questioning what you're doing. And it's just, it can be emotionally as well as financially draining at this time. So the thing that will help you stay value aligned to help you be proactive versus reactive is to ask yourself, and this is the key decision in this stage here is like, what am I willing to sacrifice and how much of it? Right. And there's that concept of no pain, no gain applies in this early stage. It's just like how we sacrifice sleep when there's an infant. It's you have to give something extra at this point. But deciding what it is you're willing to give up is the key here. Acknowledging that time, energy, resources are going to be sacrificed. Instead of just saying, how can I survive this? Is like, no, how can I survive this sanely and sustainably? So that might mean, hey, I'm going to give up going on a vacation this year for 2.5 weeks. I'm going to save that money so that could go to other personal expenses. We'll do a weekend trip instead with the family because right now we're, having to take care of this infant clinic. Or it might be I'm not willing to give up going to my son's baseball games. I'm always going to be there. So that means you're not going to sacrifice certain family things. Because I think that's where some of the sanity and survival burnout comes from is you're like, I'm considering leaving a salaried position to start my own thing so that I could do more of what I want, and that is to spend time with my family. And yet, you started your own clinic and you're like, I am so consumed with like all this. I'm not doing what I want to do. And that's because you're being reactive versus proactive.
Yeah, and the other thing you mentioned is the community and getting support from other people, which is what I love about our ketamine startup course is that much like when someone has a baby, a brand new, newborn, like it's not just the parents necessarily, but you're going to be asking the grandparents, you're going to be asking the aunts and the uncles and close friends, like, hey, can you watch the little one for a little bit? And that applies exactly to the clinic. Like, you do want to have a support network, people who you trust, people who have done it before, so that you can rely on them for, some guidance, some babysitting, getting some insights. I think having a community is also really crucial for this stage.
Totally, and that makes me think of, like, the archetypes, we talk about that, where you have all these different folks that provide different things that are needed. So, if you're the parent to your baby clinic and you're naturally a entrepreneur, you're gonna need somebody to have that more managerial, and that might be, that's part of talking about that community. So, it's like intelligently and intentionally seeking those within your network to support you in this, like, early stage. Hey, listeners, this is Kim, and I just want to acknowledge that you're here for a reason. Maybe you're stuck in a cycle of long shifts, feeling a little burnt out, and wondering if there's any other way to practice medicine, especially on your own terms. We've been there, and that's exactly why we created this free checklist, your step-by-step roadmap to starting a ketamine clinic without those costly mistakes. Grab your copy now at www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist. It's completely free because we want you to succeed, not struggle. And hey, if you're driving or mid-workout, don't sweat it. Just check out the show notes for the link when you're ready. And again, that's www.ketaminestartup.com/checklist. Now let's get back to the episode. So, and the next stage is stage 2, and that is the teenage years. You're establishing your systems. This can be maybe 2 to 5 years out, rough estimate. And you're at this point where you have this certain level of stability, but you're really trying to define who you are. You're just like how a teen wants to be their own person, to be unique and whatnot. You're really trying. It's a new set of challenges, and you got things in place. You have a more consistent, if not nice, consistent patient flow. Revenues are finally covering the expenses. And you're at this point where you're not having to hand feed the clinic. You're not having to do everything yourself. You got your systems in place, from scheduling to clinical protocols. You're not wearing all the hats. So that's how you know if you're here. You're profitable, or at least revenue exceeds expenses. Patient flow is consistent. Systems are in place. And you're thinking, okay, what's next? So your core challenge in here is your identity formation.
And, as I'm thinking about the teenage years, going from stage one to stage two, I realized that there's a stage 1.5, which is, we just went from, I just realized we went from like being a brand new newborn to being a teenager. And we skipped pretty much,
Early
ages,
childhood.
early childhood. And I do want to touch upon that because it's kind of like stage 1.5, just to get a bit more granular, is that how with toddlers, like we know that from the ages of 0 to 5, for a child, like that's really impactful for the rest of their life. And the reason I bring this up with the clinic is, as the clinic is transitioning from that newborn to a toddler, let's say the first 6 months, a year, 2 years, etc., and it's going to be variable depending upon the clinic and the owner. Like, the systems and the culture that are put in place at the very beginning are also going to impact what that business looks like long term. And it's going to impact what the teenagers look like. So, a lot of the foundational things that occur as the clinic is built out, now you're seeing patients. And remember, at that stage, like, you can go slow, like with a child, like you just want to go slowly with them. And like, it doesn't have to be fast. You want to figure things out. You want to learn how to do the ketamine infusions properly. You want to learn how to like screen and identify like who's appropriate to work with, knowing that that's going to be the foundation for the teenage years and beyond.
That's what informs your systems, right? Both clinically and as a clinic culture. How you go about things, how you screen, how you train your first staff. Because you had worn that hat and done all those jobs, you are now able to create a system that is aligned with the way you want to raise your clinic, right? The only way to create a system is to have raised it yourself.
Yeah. And so we're going to touch upon, or let's go deep dive into stage two, more about the teenage years. But I do want to rewind a little bit. And Kim had mentioned the three archetypes of owning a business of a ketamine clinic. And so if you want to listen to that after this episode, go to episode 5. And we do talk about the three types of people who open up a ketamine clinic and those archetypes. I think that's one of our more popular episodes because it really helps lay the foundation of like, who do you want on the team? All right, so going back to the teenage years, Kim had mentioned that the core challenge is really the identity formation. So this is like, hey, this is a really impactful time. And remember, because you're a teenager as a business, you're no longer in the survival mode. You now have some time to breathe and strategize. And you can consider like, hey, do I really like niche down and focus only on like one condition, for example, treatment resistant depression? Should I go on to adding like chronic pain infusions? Should I add other modalities, whether that's transcranial magnetic stimulation, aka TMS, or maybe like even like play around with adding longevity to your practice or Spravato to your practice? You may also consider, is it time to expand into a bigger clinic space or maybe even open up a second location? So having this clarity on who you are, what you stand for, what stage you're at can really help avoid getting confused, getting misguided, or being in a place you just did not want to be. So that's kind of like the teenage years. Doesn't that sound a little bit familiar where you're trying to figure things out?
I remember being a teen and, sometimes you listen and wanna be in a certain crowd that goes a certain way and does certain things, and it's like, "Oh, wow, these folks, they have a ketamine clinic, and they're doing, like, super well, and look how, like, fancy, and their Instagram and TikTok is amazing, and I just wanna be like them." And, "Oh, yeah, they got VC funding, and they're also doing something that, like, also having their own line of crystals and all that." And it's this time of, like, who am I and who do I wanna be? And hopefully in those earlier stages, you had really made that key decision of, like, why I'm doing this and what are you willing to sacrifice? Because then that'll really help you identify for this stage that key decision to answer, like, who am I as a clinic, right? It's very connected to your why. And to me, this answering the who are you as a clinic, that's almost this outward external thing. And this who can even go beyond that marketing and your brand colors. It's identifying this link that is both your business and your practice philosophy, focusing on who you are, how you want to do this, how you want to practice with integrity, how you want to hold space for your patients, how you want to treat your staff, and how the type of energy your staff brings into that clinic, being focusing on that versus what so and so doing. Like that's really can guide you and help you decide on whether, you do want to start adding something or even like possibly scaling back because maybe you've lost yourself a little bit.
Let's transition into stage 3, the prime adult years, where you're growing and optimizing. So at this stage, like an adult, it's kind of running on its own. It's a well-oiled machine. You got the automations in place. Your staff are amazing and efficient, and they know what they're doing. Like you've kind of become an expert in a way. And so that awkwardness is gone from the teenage stage. You know exactly who you are. You know what you stand for. You know what your values are. You have your why really solidified. I mean, for all those years. And you're really like know your stuff. And you've seen patients' lives getting transformed. You have that strong network of referring providers, whether those are psychologists or therapists or psychiatrists or other people in the mental health community within your local area. And business is good. You're kind of on cruise control in a way. And I think this is the time when there's that balance between running the practice and actually enjoying the fruits of your labor. But then you might be thinking at this stage, like, hey, what's next? What is my legacy?
Yeah, and that challenge here is this strategic growth if we were to kind of boil it down. And it's I think the key here too to point out if growth is not necessarily expanding the clinic, but growth into other areas. I keep on going back to the why and returning to really evaluating, are you listening to the voice within versus the external voices, influences, opinions of others? So, what I've seen for other practices in this space and what we've experienced is a lot of shoulds. And you know what? Regardless of what stage you're in, there's a lot of people that are going to be saying, you should do this or you should do that. And just like I'm saying, you should know your why and be really clear on it. But unlike the earlier stages, hopefully by now you're pretty clear on who you are, right? Because you defined that in that earlier stage. And so you're addressing this from the standpoint of a lot more confidence and stability. You went from a business that you didn't know if you need to close next month to, all right, like I'm in this space that it's as comfortable as can be, and I can come from a place and choose, how do I want to grow this? How do I want to serve? Or what do I really want to do? And in here, this key decision here is that legacy. What is your legacy? And in this legacy is very closely again tied to the why. You know, your why is that north star, and it helps guide you through the stages. And your legacy is closely connected to it, and it's a purpose that lives beyond the why in a tangible way, in a concrete form. So, does that mean you want to become the regional center for ketamine excellence and pain, or some grand thing that then you bring on a lot more providers to just completely dominate that? Or I think I might want to scale back and be a figurehead. And instead of really running the day to day, I think this is an area where there's enough comfort and stability with how the business is going. You're looking at, what else could I do to serve the community? Or I'm going to take a moment for myself to enjoy the fruits of the labor. I really like how you brought that up, Sam.
Yeah, and it's also nice because in the prime adult years, going back to like, hey, what's the legacy? What do I want to leave behind? And we want to invite you to remember that whatever decision you choose, the only wrong answer is the one that is not aligned with what you truly want. So the answers come from you within, and you can really know, like, and decide for yourself, like, what do I want to leave behind? Which transitions into stage 4, which is midlife and beyond. So, in addition to these 4 stages of what we've described, like another great metaphor that I would like to add is, the 4 seasons of life, right? We have spring, which is kind of that infancy stage. We have the summer, which is kind of like the teenage, young adult years. And then we have fall, which is midlife and transitioning into the winter period. So when I think about stage 4, I almost think about it as kind of like the midlife and beyond, like maybe the last quarter. Let's say someone lives to 100 years of age from 75 to 100, using that idea of like, all right, well, what's the next step? And we want to remind you that everything has seasons, and a clinic's going to have seasons, and to be cognizant of that. And each season is going to last a different period of time for every clinic. But now let's talk about stage 4, which is the midlife and beyond. And so this is the time that you really think like, hey, is it time for the clinic and me to part ways? Or is it me to hand it off? Like, what has been fun and challenging? What's the adventure here? And maybe your health has changed, or you just have some new priorities. Maybe the demand for your service has declined, or maybe you're just like burned out and like kind of bored and done. You're like, okay. So, regardless of wherever you're at, things have changed, and the trajectory of your clinic has changed too. And so, you're going to be in this stage, or you will know if maybe your clinic's growth has declined or plateaued, or you don't really feel connected to the original reason, yeah, why. Maybe you don't want to face this increased competition, or you're just like sick of regulatory challenges, or maybe there's like personal life challenges that cannot be ignored. That might be your family, it might be personal health or family health or retirement. So being cognizant of the stage is really crucial. And Kim, what's the core challenge here?
It's having clarity over fear guide what you do. Because this is the winter I love how you brought up the seasons. This winter. This is the it's a barren tree, and so sometimes their fear can come up of like, "Oh, so clinic growth has declined, so that means I need to up my marketing, and I need to get more patients in. I want it to go back to its glory days." And there's this, like, underlying, like, fear and panic as opposed to really grounding in oneself and to being reconnecting with your why and who you truly are to then answer with clarity of like, "Well, what does my chapter really look like?" And we'll touch base on that as for this key decision here. And it's again, like how I mentioned, reconnecting with who you are. That's what's I think is really unique to this stage, because before it was like, how do I even be a person or how do I even be a clinic owner? And then it's okay, I know how to do it, but who do I want to be as I do it? And now it's okay, I know who I am. I have these years and enough experience to feel confident of, okay, I know how a business works. I've made it become successful, and now things have shifted and it's maybe not as fun or not as satisfying, or you feel that you kinda lost that spark that during that golden age, and you're like, "Okay, what does this mean? How do I navigate this?" And frankly, I think it's like going back to your values, and instead of panic selling your practice or trying to see you're like, "Oh, wait, all the VC money's going," or "Maybe I should have done that when everyone else was doing it." And you can really get hung up on should I or should I not. And I think this is where it's just reconnecting with yourself.
And I think what's really important that you bring up is that to be conscious that everything does have an ending, right? Or a transition. So I know in our modern society, no one likes talking about death. And we just kind of, it happens in the back of a hospital. But maybe it's also like a period of celebration when someone has made it to this stage. It's, wow, you did it. You lived a good life and you've impacted a ton of people. And of course, everything has a season and it's going to end. And this is the whole life cycle. And so we're talking about it from the beginning to the end. And also, what's great is that because we know that after every winter, there comes spring again. So whether it's the business going down and you're closing, or just might be, yeah, one portion of it goes down, but then you're reinventing into a new way. And then now you're re entering the spring phase again and being born as a planting that new seed. So I think really like considering, hey, what's the next chapter look like, as Kim had mentioned, and connecting with your values. What's the next goal? What are the circumstances that influence my decisions? Like, this is really the key. So, Kim, I'm curious how, now that our listeners know about this life cycle framework, like, how can they use it?
I'm gonna share 3 simple steps, and I think before I go into that, I just wanna be clear that it's not a perfect framework, but I think the point of us sharing this life cycle framework is to recognize there are seasons, there are stages, they are predictable, they will happen, and for some, they happen faster than others. And for others, you could even go back a stage, you can regress because things happen that are outside of our control. And therefore, answering these key questions can help you be clear on how you want to approach those external factors that will happen that are beyond, way beyond our control, right? And
Yeah,
so, go ahead.
yeah, I do want to mention as you were speaking, it made me think about like an example from the real business world. And that example is a company called Sears. And if you may or may not recall Sears, like when it first started, like it was a great company. They were basically like the Amazon Prime of back in the days. They would send the little brochures and people would like send the money and then they would get it shipped to them. And when Sears was in its prime time, like nobody thought it was ever going to go out of business. And eventually it did. And so now there's not many Sears that are closing down. And I think recognizing that everything has the life cycle is really the key. And as Kim is going to share with us, hey, what are those 3 steps in taking advantage and really gleaning the insights from the life cycle?
And the first one is identify your stage. And if you're like, oh, wow, I've been in this 3, 4 years, and Kim and Sam mentioned infancy was 0 to 1 or up to 2 years. And you're going, yeah, I'm plateaued or it's declining. I must be at that fourth stage. But you look at it and you're still doing everything yourself. You're burning out. You maybe still have your daytime job or your salaried position, and you're still working your weekends, nights, and holidays on this business. You're actually not clear on what your stage is, and therefore the way you approach it will be very different. So it's not the time in your infancy to hire another provider unless you did it as a partnership to begin with, and you co-parented that baby infant or in that early childhood. So being honest with yourself, where am I? Some of us will be in this infancy stage longer, and there's nothing wrong. Oh, and before I go into that, the goal is not to get through all the stages. It is not to advance the fastest or to be the best at each one. The idea of the stages is to recognize that there are stages and that you will go through them. And so, it's okay if you're in infancy stage for a while. It's okay if it takes you a while to figure out what you wanna do and who you wanna be in that teen stage, and lucky folks out there who are in that prime for a while, awesome, great. And also great for those that went through the whole entire life cycle in 3, 4 years because that's just how it went for them. But the key is know where you're at, and where you're at means knowing who you are too.
And I think what's really important about knowing where you're at is each stage is going to have its own unique challenges. So, as a metaphor, let's say that there's a newborn or a 1 year old and they're wearing diapers. Like, hey, we just know that's going to be occurring at that stage. But if there's a teenager or a prime adult wearing diapers, like we know that's not, quote, normal for that stage. So I think identifying what stage I'm at, knowing what those challenges are for that unique stage, and saying, hey, is this just a normal part of what this stage is about? Or is it something kind of abnormal for the stage? I think that can actually help to know the challenges to expect, what challenges are normal, what challenges are abnormal.
That's a really good point. And that brings me to step 2, clarifying what you actually want. Because you know which stage you're in, and then what you really want will help you address those particular challenges and decisions you need to make in each stage. Because if you're not clear on what you want, again, you're going to look at the people around you and you're listening to somebody else and they're saying, oh, that means scaling up. Well, for you, what you really wanted to do was maybe train the next generation of providers that are going to provide a transformational treatment. And so, again, going back to clarifying what you want will help you then navigate the key decisions, the challenges within that stage. And then that leads you to be able to step 3, make the stage appropriate value based decisions. This is pretty straightforward. You know who you are, you know where you're at, you know what you want, and then you make decisions from there, as opposed to fear based decisions, reactive decisions, and thinking what you should do. And I really feel that owning your own business, just like having the honor of caring for a child, it is a spiritual journey in itself because there's this huge opportunity for growth. And I don't know about you, for those that are parents or even owning the business, it's like I'm learning to reparent, re-educate myself in things that I thought weren't issues, or let's just put it, there's lots of opportunities for personal growth as you grow your business, and, yeah, it's
It, it,
it it's
it's
a wild thing.
well, it's so true. It reminds me of this quote from one of my favorite authors. His name is Dan Millman, and it's related to parenting. But he says the quote is, "Adults do not make children. Having children makes adults." So this really reiterates the fact and the point that when someone does open up a clinic, like it actually changes that individual, like whether it's psychological growth, emotional growth, CEO thinking growth. And I think it's just having a child or having that business, like it actually changes someone on that deeper personal level.
So it's like, clinics we know entrepreneurs don't open clinics, but opening up a clinic makes you an entrepreneur or,
That's
something
a really
something
great
like that?
rephrase. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I really
It's
like it. Entrepreneurs don't make clinics. Clinics make entrepreneurs.
I love it, I love it. Any other closing thoughts as we wrap this up?
Let's just recap really quick what the 4 stages
Yes.
were, which is stage 1. Actually, I'm going to go back. Stage 0, just thinking about opening up the clinic. Stage 1, infancy. Stage 1.5, the toddler years and the young childhood years. Stage 2, teenage years. Stage 3, prime adult years. And stage 4, midlife and beyond. And really identifying, hey, where am I at in these stages? What challenges are appropriate for these stages? What is the legacy I want to leave behind? Making decisions that are value based are really crucial. And if I had to add in the final piece, would be like having that community in all 4 stages is really crucial for anyone who's interested and passionate about opening up a clinic, being in the space. Like, don't do it alone, do it with other people, learn from the other parents that have done it before, and really like lean on the community.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ketamine Startup Podcast. If you found this life cycle framework helpful, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps other entrepreneurial medical professionals discover these strategic insights and grow our community of thoughtful practice owners. For complete show notes, including a link to our blog that goes in depth on this very topic, visit ketaminestartup.com/podcast. And remember, this podcast is for educational purposes only and doesn't constitute business or legal advice. Practice management approaches should be evaluated within your specific circumstances and regulatory environment. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.